All right, good evening, everyone. I have 6:31 p.m., so I will officially call to order this August 10th meeting of the Council of the City of Lancaster. All those who wish to may join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you. Mr. Harris, would you, hold on. Before I get ahead of myself and before we call the roll of members, want to let people know 3 items. First and foremost, as the meeting is being live streamed, we are being recorded for your public comments. Please do step up to the microphone and maintain use of the microphone during public comments. Also, please take a moment to silence your cell phones, check any alarms. I'm really bad at that personally, but just did it myself. They reverberate into the microphone. It sounds terrible. Thank you. And then third, effective tomorrow for City Hall and for all public meetings, there will be a mask mandate for all unvaccinated persons within City Hall, and we encourage persons who are vaccinated to mask going forward. Either way, though, that will be effective beginning tomorrow. So for our next council meeting, please wear a mask and we will have masks available for you. Those are the 3 items I wish to address. And so with that, Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Mr. Garcia Molina. Mr. Soto.
Here.
And President Smith Waddell.
Here. Councilor Garcia Molina is excused this evening. That moves us to the approval of the minutes for the July 27th, 2021 meeting. I'll hear a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council comments on the minutes. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. That brings us to proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition. Do we have any tonight, Mr. Harris?
We do, Mr. President. We have Council Resolution 43.
All right. Would you please read the title, Mr. Harris?
Yes, Mr. President. A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster calling on representatives and senators of the Pennsylvania Legislature to repeal the Pennsylvania Fireworks Law, Act 47 of 2017, for the health and safety of the residents of the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This is introduced by Councilor Garcia Molina, and the long and short of it is that as we all know, fireworks this past year and for the past several years have been quite disruptive and seem to only be getting worse in the Commonwealth of the City of in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and in the City of Lancaster. Since a 2017 law was passed expanding what forms of fireworks were legal for sale in the Commonwealth, this problem has only been exacerbated, and the state licensing of these fireworks, I'm sorry, Councilor Diaz? Sorry, Pete. The state licensing of these fireworks prevents smaller municipalities such as our own from banning or limiting their sale. So this is a resolution which would call on our delegation and indeed representatives across the Commonwealth to take action to address this significant public nuisance that many small cities like our own face. Council comments on the resolution. From the public. All right, hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. That moves us to our first public comment period. The first public comment period is reserved for those persons who have contacted the city clerk prior to the meeting to address council. Public comments are to be limited to 3 minutes in length. They are to be made at and into the microphone. And please begin with your full name and the block of your residence. For example, my full name is Ismail Smith Waddell, residing on the 500 block of South Duke Street. Do we have any, Mr. Harris?
We do, Mr. President. First is Todd Reinhardt.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Todd Reinhardt, 200 block of West Lemon Street. So good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. As I mentioned, my name is Todd Reinhardt. I've been a resident for nearly 15 years in the city. And I know there's certainly more pressing issues that are facing our city than the eastbound connector bike route that's planned for Lemon Street. But I felt compelled to speak to that tonight for the hundreds of people who petitioned the city last Friday to cease and amend the plan that's currently in place. Even though there's a growing number of people against the plan as a whole, this is not an anti-bike lane commentary. This is a pro-safety, pro-transparency, and pro-community involvement commentary. And frankly, I feel like the city's come up a bit short in those areas in this process. Given the numerous safety issues and challenges surrounding the existing parking separated bike lane that's on Walnut Street, which is a one-way street in our city, it's surprising to a number of us that the city went ahead and selected that same design for Lemon Street, which is a two-way street. It raises some serious concerns among a lot of people. I spoke to a number of cyclists and bike lane proponents who have also registered these same safety concerns, often citing that the Walnut Street project that it currently exists is not yet fully complete, that it lacks signage, signals, and such to make it properly safe. In terms of transparency, I believe the community should be aware of what's behind the data supporting the bike lane projects. By now, it should be no surprise the statement, 60% of interested but concerned bicyclists. That should be familiar to anyone who's read the 172-page active transportation plan or any of the communications put out by the city themselves. But the context behind that data I found surprising. It doesn't come from a single city resident. It doesn't come from a single county resident. It doesn't come from a single resident or source of the state of Pennsylvania. It comes from a 2005 position paper by the bike controller of the city of Portland, Oregon. That's what we're basing decisions off of. Finally, as input from the community, it increasingly feels like the only feedback is feedback that matches the narrative in question. If the city truly wanted feedback, why not seek it when this process started in 2020, or when the alternatives to Chestnut Street were proposed, or when the Lemon Street option was selected, or when the creation of the final design plan came about in April of this year? But no, we didn't find out about it until the only public meeting that was put before us was on July 14th. Interestingly enough, due to the poor meeting turnout and the lack of community awareness, former Mayor Smithgall decided to take upon himself and organize a meeting that was open to the public, citizens, stakeholders, to discuss anything related to the plan, safety issues, and quality of life. It was not an anti-bike lane meeting. In closing, I just kindly request the city council or the mayor to step up and act upon the will of the hundreds of petitioners to cease phase 2 of the project and amend the plan, or at the very least, direct the city Public Works Department to properly schedule and promote a community meeting where the process can be discussed, debated, and addressed for the good of all citizens of Lancaster. Thank you for your time, attention, and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Reinhardt.
Council President, would it be okay if Mr. Campbell just gave a brief remark?
Are we addressing this? Does this come on the agenda tonight?
It does not come on the agenda tonight.
My thinking is I'd be happy to address this later on the agenda or in the second public comment period, but this particular period being reserved for public comment. I just want to respect that.
Totally fine. Thank you.
Who's next, Mr. Harris?
Mike Emmerich.
Mr. Emmerich.
And
Mr. Emmerich?
I assume not.
All right.
And next is Christopher Wolfel.
Good evening, sir.
Hi. I don't live in the town, but for the last 40 years, I've been running an auto repair shop. I have two actually in the city, one on King Street and one on Manor Street. And I've been talking to the city police, and they have suggested that I started here to talk to you folks about trying to help us with the Manor Street welfare department. And their entrance is basically right on our property.
Okay.
There are about 600 people a week that go in there, and they all try to park on our property. We have had a war of towing at this place. And about 12 years ago, they changed this over to a different part of the property where they're basically parking on our property. I have a letter. I don't suppose you guys are looking at any of the paperwork we have, but there were 53 calls for police, I think, last year. We probably have a few hundred documented instances of towing cars from our property for the last 12 years, probably 200 or 300. And they asked me to come here and talk to you first to see what we can do to try to get this entrance moved from where it is now to where it used to be, or to the east side of their building, so it doesn't encroach on our business.
So, first of all, thank you. I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss, did you say that there was paperwork that you had brought with you, or?
Well, I have a letter here from the city police. If you want to quickly look at it, it's not very long.
I would love to look at it, actually.
Should I bring it to you?
You can. Thank you.
Chris, what is your last name?
Wolfley. I guess I missed that part.
Yeah. Would you, I'm sorry, Mr. Wolfley, would you like this back? Because I can hand it right back to you.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry to make you walk back and forth, but thank you.
just to feast your eyes on this file. This is a file of all the cars that we have towed for illegal parking in the last 10 years, just from our own property.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to inspect these individually, but
I'll
your
just
point
say
is made.
Probably 300 or 400 of them,
Yeah.
and we're tired of it.
Did you have, I don't want to.
Well, it's just that some of these calls or these instances are becoming violent now. People are starting to get violent. We have guns. We're fixing cars. We carry guns. It's ridiculous. We're always threatened from this. Also, and I don't know if this is a requirement, but I know that the handicap parking for the welfare office is about 200 feet from their door. So all the handicapped people that can't walk, they want to park on our place because the door is right there. Quite literally, they can't walk 200 feet. We've had many trips to the magistrate for people trying to sue us over this. I've been spit on. They even try to file false insurance claims about their cars, claiming we damaged them. And some of the cars haven't even left the property. So we've had to deal with that. And we've also had instances where we've been contacted by the district attorney's office over parking on private property. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, I talked to Mike Hagan, and he's quite tired of it as well. They're always at our place. We're trying to fix cars there. When somebody parks there and their car gets towed and they act up, everything stops for an hour or two until we get through the violence and the baloney of the whole thing. And he has started to cite these people now, but now it's going to clog your system. We need that entrance moved from it's the northwest part of their building, back to the east side of their building where their parking is, where their property is, where their parking lot is, where their handicapped is. Because quite honestly, it's jamming us up. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I actually, 12 years ago when they did this, we actually towed some of the construction workers that were building this entrance. Even they wouldn't respect our property.
Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Wolfley. This sounds quite serious. And we will we'll reach out to the county. And could you give your contact information?
Their address is 832 Manor Street.
Oh, yeah.
My address is 850
850.
Manor Street.
May I ask a question,
Of course.
President? Do you have cameras that show?
We have 16 cameras. We have more cameras than banks.
Okay,
We
so
do.
It's,
We have invested heavily in cameras, bars for the building. And 12 years ago, I paid $40,000 for a tow truck that I didn't need, just for this.
and you have the past history of the video still stored.
No, I don't keep that.
Okay.
That overwrites in 4 or 5 days or a week. You don't want to look at 12 years of video, do you?
No, but it kind of gives me an idea of who is the perpetrators that are parking in your
If-
property.
If you look at our Facebook page, you'll see a few examples that I've posted. And that's another thing. They'll park on our property for this, and then they go on the social media and they'll write ridiculous things about us. We're towing cars with kids in them, and all sorts of stuff.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mr. Wolfley, before you leave the meeting, if you would give your contact information to my clerk, Mr. Harris, so that someone can follow up with you from this request. We'll look into it from the council side, and the administration may want to as well, and then we'll reach back out to you to let you know what we know or what we can do for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Do we have any other public comments, Mr. Harris?
We have one more, Mr. President. Andre Gilbert.
Mr. Gilbert?
Madam Mayor, City Council members, how are you doing this evening? I'm Andre Gilbert. I'm in the 400 block of Church Street. I have a few things to say. I have my notes. Okay, so I have an African-American business. Been doing business here since 2005. I'm on the Lancaster City Democratic Committee. I'm on the Black Caucus. On the Veterans Caucus, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Veterans Caucus. First thing I'd like to speak about is the point system for seniority in the military members. I hear you're going to possibly get rid of that. I disagree with that, and a lot of my constituents do disagree with that. As a veteran, I'm personally offended about that. I'd like to go to my next point. My next point is I believe that there needs to be more police training. They've been coming around and pretty visible in a friendly setting, more than usual, especially at Christmas Adams Community Center. But also in the meantime, between times, sometimes it feels like they're on the hunt and we're being hunted like the whole slave catcher thing. And I definitely don't appreciate that. There needs to be more training and better oversight and a real oversight committee if something were to happen, and that they need to know that repercussions will be happening and not a slap on the wrist. Also, my barber has a barbershop, African-American woman, Water Street, right across the street from the Moose. The original name of the barbershop is Lady Barber Lives Matter. It's nothing bad or anything like that. It's just more or less a women's empowerment thing, women barbers. The logo was disapproved for some reason or another. I would like that to be addressed as well. My next point is, why the difficulty in trying to do something for the community? We've been doing stuff for the community I've been a Christmas addict for 5 years, so things happened 2.5 years ago, so we had to start our own organization where we're doing things. I've been hearing that we have to use the police instead of using constables, and it's been hard to get permits and everything. My next point is, I heard and I did some research about the city back in Saca. It seems like the Latino community, the Caucasian community. My question, I talked to the mayor summer 2019 about this. What about the Black community? Get us the Chameleon Club, a facility or something that we can do what we need to do. The board is Caucasian, Christmas Addicts is capped, and the upper management's Latino. We need a place that we can be ourselves and do what we need to do. And give us the training, whatever we need to do so we can help our community and help others in the community as well. It's not really an isolated thing where, it's a Black thing or whatever like that. We need help. My constituents in my ward are coming to me, we need help. So handhold us like they did. We didn't get the 40 acres and a mule and everything like that. So they helped them to get land grants and helped them how to cultivate the land and sell the product and everything like that. And then we had to be sharecroppers in that land and deal with all this other stuff. So I'm asking for that help as well. Let me see, hold on, I got my point right here, let's see. Yeah, I would like for us to be example to other cities and communities. We can do that here. Most of y'all are Democrats. I voted for y'all, I helped get y'all elected. My constituents, they don't trust you, they don't believe you. I'm actually like deliberating with them like almost on a daily basis, like, well, they're doing their best and this and that and so forth and so on. We need to do better. We need to let them know that y'all care. They think since they, some of y'all look like them that, it's okay, or someone say, it's not okay. They don't want to vote, they don't trust you, they don't believe you. They think that you're probably more or less catering to the white constituents as well. We need to fix that. We need to have the businesses come here, pay their fair share of taxes. The Barney Yule thing downtown is nice. I know that's more like possibly to get more tourism here, which is very nice and all, but really, like I told the mayor 2 summers ago, and we see it at Marion Court, we are not welcome down here. They don't want us down here, the Black and brown community. They want the other dollars. Okay, that's enough right there. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Mr. Gilbert,
Yes,
what's the best contact, or if you would just, again.
he has my information, but I will make sure he has it.
You've got it, Mr. Harris?
Yes, I do.
All right. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Yep. Mr. Harris, do we have any other public comments?
We do not, Mr. President.
Okay. That brings us to reports requested by council. We do not have it on the agenda, but with council's forbearance, we have been asked to hear a presentation from city staff and consultants on the status of the comprehensive plan. If you would be, I'm not sure who's the ringleader this evening, but if you would make your way to the table and the microphone, it would be very much appreciated.
Just bear with us while we
Oh,
hook up
we
the
brought the whole
computer.
gang, huh?
There's 5 more in the car.
Oh.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councilors. Always a pleasure to be here, and good evening, members of the public. My name is Douglas Smith. I'm the Chief Planner for the City of Lancaster, and here to provide a brief report on the comprehensive plan that the Planning Bureau and our department has been working on under the leadership of Chris Delfs, our Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. 18 months ago, we started scoping this important plan for the city with the intention of creating a plan for the city's future with process and outcomes that are representative of the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and address the well-being of our city residents. You'll hear more about this plan from our consultants after, but I wanted to provide a little bit of context for you before you hear this. We, in the last year, have assembled 19 residents from across the city to serve on a resident-led committee, our comprehensive plan committee, and hired a facilitation consultant to ensure an inclusive environment and positive and productive group dynamic is maintained throughout the duration of the project. The group has met a dozen times this year to help us craft a community engagement plan and weigh in on the process of the comprehensive plan. They have also worked alongside city leadership and staff to select our consultants, who you'll hear from this evening. We're proud of this unique and collaborative process that we've designed, and that we had 19 residents who weighed in on our consultant selection process. And if I recall, I heard from this team that it was one of the most robust selection processes that they've ever gone through. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the generous funders who helped make this planning process possible. We had generous funding from the High Foundation and the Free Foundation, both local foundations, as well as Partners for Place, which is a national program and highly competitive. And we also received funding from the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, which allowed us to hire Larock Hudson as our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Fellow. And he has been at events throughout the city to help get citizen input. It's with this foundational work that we enter this partnership with this consultant team this evening. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Kimberly Baptiste from Bergman to introduce her team and give a brief presentation.
Thanks, Douglas. Oh, this is on. Okay. And thank you for squeezing us into your agenda this evening. As you can see, this is your comprehensive plan team. Bergman Associates is leading the charge. My name is Kimberly Baptiste with Bergman, joined here this evening by Samantha Aldrich from Bergman and Dave Schwartz from Bergman. And we are urban planners that specialize in land use planning, urban revitalization, and downtown revitalization studies. We're supported by a robust sub-consultant team that is helping to support our efforts with various specializations. Down at the end, we have Kim Stever and Leslie Russell from Eastwick Solutions and the Roz Group, and then Steve Nelson, also on my right from Eastwick Solutions. They specialize in community engagement, and we are going to talk a little bit more about our robust engagement process that we are envisioning as part of this process. Todd Poole is also here from Forward Planning. Forward Planning specializes in market and economic analysis, so he will be really leading the charge, him and his team, really looking at economic sustainability for the city moving forward. Not here this evening is David Rouse. He is an independent consultant here in Pennsylvania with a specialty over 40 years, actually, of land use planning specialty, and has actually written books about comprehensive planning. So he will bring his vast experience to the table as well to really inform the planning process. So the first question is really, what is a comprehensive plan? And I think Douglas outlined this very well, but it really is a planning document that's intended to serve as a framework to help you as city decision makers make policy and investment decisions over the course of really the next 10 years. So we tend to look 10 years out as we think about land use planning and community planning. The foundation of this is intended to be, as I mentioned earlier, a very robust engagement process. So we want this to be a community-driven plan that is really directed and guided by community members. Ultimately, once the plan is completed, It'll lay the foundation for future zoning code updates, policy decision-making, as well as capital improvements, projects, and collaborations here within the city. I covered some of this already on the previous slide, but again, really the importance of this is the fact that this plan will serve as that foundational document to help you make decisions that are in line with what's important with members of your community. So we'll address a series of topics, which you can see on this slide, and also topics that aren't listed here, everything from workforce development to equity to accessibility, as well as other topics that we envision will come up and be driven and identified by community members as we move forward in this process. The outcomes ultimately will be a series of community values and priorities, or really a vision statement of what the city wants to be over the next 10 years, and then the foundation for how to achieve that. The Lancaster Today report is really an existing conditions analysis, so we will give you a robust snapshot of where you are today as a community, what trends we're seeing, both historically as well as into the future. We'll be looking at land uses and looking at individual commercial areas, the downtown, individual neighborhoods, industrial areas, recreation resources, and really thinking about how these areas might evolve, so how they may be developed or how they might be preserved over the course of the next 10 years. And then ultimately use all of that to inform a series of recommendations, actions, and policies for moving forward, which will be captured in an implementation strategy that will identify roles and responsibilities, partnerships, cost estimates where applicable, and potential funding resources. Community engagement really is at the heart of this process. Our goal is to create a very transparent planning process, so all voices have the opportunity to come to the table and inform the comprehensive plan update. We want to use this process as a way to hear from all community members, ensuring that we get a diverse and inclusive variety of perspectives to inform the plan. And the way that we'll do this is through a series of different meeting types. Project team meetings here with members of city staff. Douglas talked about the comprehensive plan committee that has already been formed and has already been meeting even prior to our team being brought on. Key organizational leader meetings, so we've already started those today, so reaching out to key stakeholders, different organizations here within the city, LCA, the EDC are two examples that we met with today, but really understanding their perspectives and the type of work that they are already doing here within the community. Focus group meetings, public workshops, so there will be at least 3 touch points where we are proactively going out to the community and inviting all members of the community to come and share their perspectives. Recognizing it's sometimes difficult for people to come to public meetings, we're also planning a series of what we call pop-up neighborhood events, so leveraging other activities that are already going on in the city and giving the people the opportunity to participate in a more informal manner. Student engagement is something else that we're looking at. How can we get students more engaged in the process? So either going into the schools, if possible this year, or creating other avenues to engage students at both the high school and the collegiate level. Of course, making sure that we are providing online engagement opportunities. And then what we call a meetings in a box, which is essentially giving a toolkit to community leaders to self-facilitate meetings with their neighborhood groups or other residents within the community. So city staff has already been proactively out there. The first event, the Mayor's Neighborhood Week, a number of weeks ago, city staff was already out there gathering initial feedback and input that they've shared with our team about the future, what people see as important aspects of the future of the city, some of the things that they see as areas for improvement. And we will continue to leverage and identify creative ways to get out into the neighborhoods and meet with residents through a series of different avenues, whether it be walking tours, neighborhood block parties, other special events. On October 1st will be your First Friday event, for example. Also, making sure that we're leveraging existing online opportunities. Engage Lancaster, utilizing that as a platform in order to solicit feedback. Also developing a project-specific website that will be a portal for information associated with the plan. Making sure that we are providing materials in a variety of different languages, again, to ensure we are being inclusive and reaching all residents here within the city. So what is the timeline for all this? We've been underway for about 3 months now. We do anticipate having the plan wrapped up by fall of 2022. So we do have about 15 months left where we'll be focusing on creating all of those deliverables and soliciting community feedback throughout various touch points in the process. By the end of this year is when we do expect to have the existing conditions fully completed and a sound assessment of key findings and attributes. So next steps, we are in the midst of stakeholder meetings. Our team will be here in the city today, tomorrow, for a full day tour of the city, which we're really looking forward to with city staff and a number of comprehensive plan committee members and additional stakeholder meetings on Thursday. And then we will have our formal public kickoff event on September 30th and October 1st. And at that point is when we will be hosting additional one-on-one meetings, 5 focus group meetings, a public meeting, neighborhood workshops, and we'll be attending the First Friday event. So please start spreading the word and get those dates on your calendars, and we will be sharing more information with you as the dates approach. Thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Members of council?
Yeah. In regards to neighborhood, what actual location in the city are you looking to invest more to interact with, to find out, what exactly the community wants?
We'll be working closely with the planning department, so Chris and Douglas, to identify specific locations for future engagement opportunities. But we don't intend to overlook any of the neighborhoods. All of the neighborhoods, all of the areas of the city will be addressed and considered as part of this process.
Thank you.
If I may, Council President. As far as the project team, who makes up the project team and how many members does it consist of?
From the consultant side. So in addition to, how many of us are there here? 2, 4, 7 here. Todd from Forward Planning, there are a number of his staff that will be doing some of the analysis work as it relates to the economic analysis. But this team largely is the team that you will see consistently, minus a couple members from the Eastwick team that are not able to be here this evening that will really also be additional faces to the community engagement campaigns. But this is largely the team that you'll be interacting with, and we'll be doing 99% of the work on the project.
Oh, great, thank you.
No.
Mayor? All right. Thank you. Oh, yes, sir.
Do public have questions?
You may, yeah.
Okay, I got 2 major questions, and maybe you don't have the information. My name is Ivan Costa-Velez. I'm from 800 block of Harlan Avenue in Lancaster. I've been here 45 years. 2 questions I have for the group. Number 1, where are you located? Your main office. Where's the Beehive? I would like to know that.
So Bergman's located in Conshohocken, Philadelphia, in
Okay.
Trevose.
That's one. My second one. Okay, maybe you don't have it now. How much is this going to cost the city? Please, I know you guys can't answer that, but clerk, would I be able to get that information? President, would I be able to get that information?
Yes, we can certainly share that with you. And I do want to just acknowledge that, as Mr. Thomas indicated, we have secured, I believe, half of the budget through private philanthropy. And part of our challenge in doing this is we haven't done this since 1993. And so there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of pieces that we are trying to fold together. So I'll be happy to share with you the budget so that you can see it for yourself, Ivan.
Yeah, and one last question. It's really cool. I've been here 45 years. There's a big minority community that doesn't speak English. How many of you speak Spanish? And I'm putting you on the spot. And I don't mean hola and that, I mean Spanish, that yo puedo hablar contigo y tú puedes hablar conmigo.
So one of the recognizing that.
Thank you.
One of our team members from Eastwick that could not be here this evening is fluent in Spanish.
That is very, very, very important, okay? There's a large population que no habla inglés, okay? And you can't cut it with yo hablo, tú hablas Spanish. Just a suggestion, not picking on you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Before you, can you make sure before you leave the meeting?
I think he has it. I've asked you for different things. I can give it to you again.
I have it.
Okay.
Just make sure.
And thank you very much for the time.
Of course, thank you. Ms. Patterson, please.
Hi, I'm Kat. Thank you for presenting the comprehensive plan. My question is, can you speak on the plans for affordable housing in the city of Lancaster that is being included in this comprehensive plan?
Yes, can you just give your last name for the clerk's?
Kat Patterson.
Thank you.
And if I could take that one.
Mayor?
So Kat, we are in the process of developing an interim affordable housing strategy to align with the American Rescue Plan funds. That will be a preliminary and iterative start to getting the ball rolling as it relates to the American Rescue Plan funds. And we'll focus on several key areas, including production as well as preservation. At the same time that we're getting started on that, the comprehensive planning process will kick in, and there are members of this team that will be helping us with additional analyses in conjunction with the Center for Research Analysis here in Lancaster to help us understand more about the different income levels, both at different levels of AMI. And so I'm answering this question because we are reviewing that interim plan to present to council potentially as early as October with a set of recommendations as it relates to the American Rescue Plan. And this is just coming to council right now because we were just having this conversation today. So this is, the ball is moving, and there are resources that we can bring to bear now in a different way. So more to come.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything to add? Or?
I would just add that Forward Planning, my firm, will be taking the lead on looking at affordable housing opportunities, and in general, looking at it in the context of how it supports economic development, and economic development in turn supports development of housing. This is a crisis issue around the country. We look at this issue in most of the communities that we work in. However, every community is different in terms of how you address it. So will be the case here in Lancaster. So that's about all I can say right now, having not jumped in fully yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kat.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Anyone else? Sir? Please come to the microphone. Can everybody hear me over there? Sir, please come to the microphone. It's meeting policy. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Musselman.
Okay, question was raised is what the cost of this program is going to cost the city. Could I get a answer as far as what the total cost will be, including what already some of our civic-minded companies have donated, but where's all the money coming from in total for the program? Thank you.
I can deliver that to you, Mr. Musselman.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Is
I'm
it
going to
public
get
knowledge?
it.
Is that public?
Yes, it is public knowledge.
Okay,
I just
good.
don't have the number off the top of my head. So I will make sure to deliver it to your door because Mr. Melselman is my neighbor.
I want everybody to know what that is.
Okay, and
besides
we
me.
can announce it and share it at the next council meeting. How would that be?
Okay, thank you.
And I'm
Yep.
sorry, for the public record, could I have your name, sir?
Mr. Musselman, real quick, we just need your first and last name for Mr. Harris's records.
And the street where you live on, sir? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Musselman. Yep.
How do I do this again? Tony Dastra, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. I have a concern about entering a planning process where currently, this is not your fault. This is not your fault. But a concern I have as a member of the public is that we're going into this planning process and already a precursor to it has been a project that has been called a landmark project by members of the Planning Commission. I personally, as you may find, I don't agree with the project, but I hope to see good work from this team. And I have a massive, I think the concerns about cost, as well as who's funding the project, are relevant and need to be discussed publicly because money does talk around this community very loudly. And it just doesn't make sense to me to be going into a planning process where in the middle of it is the peak, the construction completing for a landmark project in the middle of a 10-year plan. It just doesn't quite seem congruent for me. So I have reservations, and while I am thankful to private investment, I think we need to be conscious of that because that tends to equate stakeholder, and the stakeholders of this planning process need to be and only really be the public, not so much the business entities that do business here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra.
Mr. President, I have one more question.
Of course, Councilor Diaz.
In reference to, since we're all touching the subject of housing, and it's evident that Lancaster has a very high poverty rate. The majority of those are people, whether they're immigrants, people of color, just the vast majority. What exactly that you can quickly answer are your strategies? People have been crying out. They're getting evicted. I have a family that reached out to me. They have 7 members in their family, and they're living currently at a hotel. And every time I try to send them to an agency, well, sorry, we can't help you. You'll have to go somewhere else. So these are the problems that we're having currently. And it's not just one family, it's many residents in Lancaster that work very hard and that only make probably just minimum wage. So just a quick little answer.
Madam Councilwoman, the way that I would answer that question is, you described an acute or crisis situation. The comprehensive plan is not designed to address an acute or crisis situation, or at least the one that we're talking about, which has been exacerbated by the pandemic. Not that it makes it any, less onerous for those folks, and I'm fully aware of it because, again, I kind of work in this field on a daily basis. The strategy that ultimately we will come up with, however, is designed to ensure that there is more housing generally for a spectrum of income levels, particularly at the lower income level. The question is, where can it be done? Where can it be done affordably and without displacement, right? That's the trick in all this. So it's quite complex, but the issue that you've just raised could never be addressed by a comprehensive plan, because a comprehensive plan is, a 10-year arc, basically. What we're talking, or what you're, identifying is a today issue. So,
Councilor Diaz, if I may.
Of course.
I think that's well taken. And I had my stakeholder interview with part of your team I think it is, yes, very much a critical issue, and is I think also an issue of the 10-year arc. And so I think it may be helpful, for example, to know, let me back up a step. Being fully aware that really what we're going, the question of like, what is the comprehensive plan going to do for racial justice 18 to 24 months from now as we work through the plan for our built environment is not a question we can answer right now here today. But it may be helpful for members of council to know what strategies, for example, have existed or been implemented at the intersection of sort of delivering improvements and designs for the built environment and the public plan and racial justice, or what has worked in other comprehensive plans in terms of creating more affordability. And I don't mean that to be acute in any way, but really just to say that we are, as this council and us as a city, are relying on the decades, in fact, of expertise sitting at the table and in front of me. So anything contextualizing in that way, I think would go a long way to not just comforting council, but the public as a whole. And so I think, I just don't think we want to give people the impression that we are dividing our critical issues from our long-term issues, because I do believe that you have the expertise to inform us a little bit on that. Sorry, Councilor Diaz.
Well, when somebody's mentioning diversity, equality, inclusion, and, the process is not really equitable. So it's more like you're coming in and you're going to build another condominium, or maybe, the Statue of Liberty, and make it look pretty. It's basically, and I'm making it plain English because a lot of people don't comprehend certain languages and certain type of words. So I try to make it basic so they can understand that they're not talking about people that are starving in a corner or people that can't pay their rent because it's 12 to 15 a month. This is totally different.
I think you're exactly right, Councilor Diaz, and indeed, what the folks in front of us are empowered to do is to give us a frame for what our built environment and our zoning and planning ordinances can do to help us reach justice goals and reach our vision for the city. So while they're not, bringing us specific developments, I think it's an extremely reasonable question about how racial and economic justice can be baked directly into the design of the comprehensive plan, though I would not lay the responsibility for an individual project at their feet, though I think your point is extremely well taken.
If I can say, we're actually rescoping some things in our particular scope for my firm to perform a gentrification analysis or a neighborhood gentrification analysis citywide. I don't think that's been done here before. Actually, it's probably not done in many comprehensive plans, I can tell you, having worked on a number of them. And so what that's going to allow us to do is to identify which neighborhoods have been gentrified based on certain criteria that we use, and perhaps look ahead that if no action were taken, here are the neighborhoods that are in jeopardy of being gentrified, right? And making it that much more expensive or unaffordable for folks to live. So that's part of a strategy, or part of what would support a strategy that would be proactive to say, okay, well, here's what we need to do to arrest gentrification and to keep things more equitable for folks who've been living here and want to establish a business and obviously maintain residency here. So that's just one thing that I can speak to at this moment.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, I think, as you've probably guessed, this council in particular would be very invested in the results of that in particular. But also, certainly I can't promise this will be the last round of moderate to fairly intense questioning of the process. But I do thank you for coming here to present to us this evening. In fact, I can guarantee that racial and economic equity questions will continue to be the number one thing that you hear. And my hope is that you are up to the task. I have another public comment. One more, Mr. Hudson. Thank you.
LaRock Hudson, DEI fellow for this particular project. I think I'd be remiss at this point in time to not bring up to council, the consultants and my own bureau, that the inequities that we're speaking of took place and have been taking place long before 1993. If you, and I implore everybody here to delve into the 1993 plan, it won't take you long to see those inequities. I think when we're talking about racial justice, restorative justice, things of that nature, we need to put the egg before the chicken. Meaning we need to start as far back to the beginning as we possibly can that will be palatable to the general public. To do any less is to do a discredit to every bit of work that we're saying this comprehensive plan is supposed to include. It's my purpose this evening to bring forward a semi-proposal, because I'm not going to do all of the work for you, but I implore council to deliberate individually with myself. I've already lobbied with a few of you on taking up a resolution to institute a Truth and Reconciliation Commission here in the city of Lancaster. I'm proposing that said commission go back to the 1940s, when the most inequities have occurred in our lifetimes, and come into the present day. This would in turn, if council would see fit to institute such a resolution, extend the life of this plan, but it would also create an environment of trust, accountability, and transparency that this body, the administration, and the city says is so important to its work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Mr. Dastra.
Joey Dastra, 100 block North Plum Street. Building off of what LaRock said, I think it's really important that we have a robust historical study, because I did actually read the 1993 plan. It is a really easy 750-ish page read. And there is a historical section, but it doesn't really go into much detail of the mistakes we've made in the past, particularly that time period between the 1940s and the 80s, when it discusses urban renewal in Lancaster specifically. There is a great book called A City Transformed that is about that particular issue that is specific to Lancaster, that I would suggest someone reads if you guys already haven't. Because if we don't look at the mistakes of the past or the strategies that we tried to use before that haven't worked, how are we going to figure out how to move forward and also answer to the calls for help that these communities have? My second point is, I know that this only looks at a 10-year time period. And you said that it's not supposed to address crises. However, as a young person, I'm not optimistic about the future, particularly due to the effects of climate change. We just saw the new IPCC report come out. I haven't read it myself, but just based on the coverage, it's not looking good. And we're going to see some serious effects as soon as the 40s of this century. I understand that we can't necessarily stop climate change. That ship sailed a while ago, but we're going to have to deal with the effects of it. And I know that you talked about working with companies that are built around urban sustainability. And so I think that also needs to be a robust section, because whether we like it or not, that's the future that's coming for us. especially as a young person. Again, not excited, but I'm going to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dasher. I actually happen to have several stock copies of A City Transformed, so I'd be happy to share them with any member of the Planning Commission, of the team, and the Planning Commission, but that's beside the point. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, you and we have our collective work cut out for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just going to take a minute for things to settle. Be right with you. All right. That brings us to the report of committees of council for the meeting held on August 2nd, 2021. We will begin with the Public Safety Committee, and Councilor Garcia Molina is not present this evening, so I'll be giving his report. The Public Safety Committee took up two items. First is Council Resolution number 43, which was passed at the top of this meeting, as well as Administration Resolution number 47, 2021, which would approve amendment of Civil Service Board rules and regulations for the hiring of police officers. This is not the matter of the seniority points, but changes that would allow for a fairer analysis and change the change the weighting between written and oral exams to improve our recruitment for police and fire departments. We'll talk about that a little more when we get further down the agenda. Next, we'll hear the report of the Public Works Committee. Councilor Soto.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Council President. Public Works Committee did meet on the 2nd of August. There was 3 items on the agenda. First item on the agenda was resolution number 45. Second agenda was administration resolution number 46. And there was also a presentation from the Lancaster Bikes, and no action on council was taken. It was just a presentation by Mr. Paulson. Resolution number 45 authorizes the application of a Keystone Communities grant for implementation in zero plans for South Queen and South Prince Street. It would, Mr. Campbell said that this would be a $25,000 grant, would be used for planning for improvements to traffic, calming, and other pedestrian safety measures on South Prince Street and South Queen Streets. The planning follows as a version 0 plan, which identifies those corridors as having higher rates of pedestrian injury. Administration Resolution number 46, 2021, authorizing the application for Keystone's Communities Grant for streetscape improvements on South Ann Street. The application requests a grant of as much as $500,000 for $500,000. Those funds would be matched with internal funding for as much as $750,000. The money will be used for streetscape improvements on South Ann Street between Juniata and New Dauphin Street, and on Juniata Street to Milbourne Park. The work will include paving, the additional pedestrian lighting and trash cans, historic markers, and sidewalk and curved paving as needed. He said this area is underinvested, and these improvements build on other investments being made in the area, including renovations to Milbourne Park. That concludes my report, Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Soto. Sorry about that. Thank you, Councilor Soto. That brings us to the report of the Economic Development Committee. Councilor Arroyo.
Council President, we did not meet as a committee last time.
Thank you, Councilor. That brings us to the Finance Committee. Councilor Bakay.
Thank you, Council President. The Finance Committee met on August 2nd and discussed two related items. First, Bill number 19, which would appropriate American Rescue Plan funds for the purchase of a property adjacent to the Oyster Point Reservoir. Mr. Hopkins explained to the committee that this land is being offered for sale to the city, and because of its location adjacent to existing water infrastructure and the fact that it's the only undeveloped parcel surrounding it, city officials feel strongly that the city should acquire the land. The price is $5.9 million, which is in line with its appraised value. Typically, these types of purchases would be funded with a bond issue for capital improvements. However, these funds are now available and can be used for this purchase. The second related item is resolution number 24 that would authorize the city to reimburse those funds within 3 years should a bond issue, bank note, or other funding source be an option. The bill is on our agenda this evening for first reading, and we will take up the resolution at our next meeting on August 24th. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilor Bakay. That brings us to the Community Planning Committee. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. Community Planning did meet on August the 2nd, and we had two items on the agenda. Administration Bill number 2021, rezoning properties in the 300 block of East Liberty, and also amending the Community Development Block Grant Action Plan, both of which will be addressed in the legislative agenda. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Craig. And I believe that brings us to the report of the Personnel Committee. Councilor Diaz.
Yes. The Personnel Committee met on Monday, August 2nd, and reviewed the following nominations for reappointment. Allison Anderson and Jamie Crabell, they will both be reappointed to the Human Relations Commission Advocacy Council for the term of September 30th through September 30th, 2024. The next would be for the Lancaster County Convention Center Authority for reappointment would be Dorsey Bullock. That would be September 30th through September 30th, 2026. The next would be for the Board of Plumbing Examiners for the term of September 12, 2021 through September 12, 2022, and that would be Steve Schwanger, Chet Walton, Daniel Musser, Barry Souders, and also Shane Way. The next will be, I'm thinking it's Daniel, unless that was misspelled, Baker, Mike Davis, Stephen L.C. for reappointment to the Sewer Appeals Board for the term of September 12th through September 12th, 2026. And at this time, I'd like to make a motion for these reappointments to be approved.
So moved. Second. Whatever you need. Sorry.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Council comments on the appointments from the public? Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Bakay.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye.
That is all.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. All right, that brings us, am I even right? That brings us into our legislative agenda, beginning with the Historic District. Mr. Harris.
Considering the following applications and recommendations from the Historical Architectural Review Board for improvements to properties within the Historic District. First is Lancaster Maternal Fetal Medicine, owner of 31 South Lime Street, requests installation of a new freestanding yard sign. Then we have Kirk and Emily Marzak, owners of 107 South Duke Street. They request replacement of wooden windows to reestablish the historic window style. And Last, we have JAM Investments, or JAM Investments, owner of 1019 Buchanan Avenue, and they request demolition of a brick garage and construction of a new garage in the same location, and construction of a one-story rear addition to that house. And those applications were all recommended for approval by the Historical Architectural Review Board.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Just to be clear, Councilor Soto, was that a motion to approve all of them?
Yes, motion to include all three.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Council comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Beke?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Soto?
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. All right, that brings us to C, ordinances for final passage. Mr. Harris, I'm going to have you, I have a note here for council, but Mr. Harris, I'm going to have you go ahead and read the title.
Yes, Mr. President. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, amending Section 67-5B of the Code of the City of Lancaster to remove the application of seniority points for promotions within the Police Bureau, amending Section 42-7G3 to remove the application of seniority points for promotions within the Fire Bureau, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect in accordance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harris. So, members of council, you'll remember that we took this up, I believe, for the first time in June, and then ultimately moved our second reading and vote to this date, August 10th. What that does mean is that in the intervening time, the advertisement timeline has expired. As such, this ordinance could not be passed and take legal effect this evening. So, if council wanted to take action on this, we would make a motion to re-advertise it, which we could do in time for it to be voted on at the next meeting of council. A motion could be made to amend and re-advertise it, and then it would reappear amended at the next meeting of council, or no motion could be made and it would go nowhere at all and die on the floor, as I understand it. So just to summarize what our options are, given the timeline moving forward. So I'll say that and then I'll stop talking.
Council President, I make a motion to move Bill 12 to our August 24th meeting for final vote.
Second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Council comments on the motion to move the bill.
I don't have any question about what it's about, just that it'll be re-advertised so that the community has another chance to look at it before we take it on the 24th.
Right, we're required to, the timeline within which we are supposed to act expired, and once that timeline expires, without re-advertisement, to make sure that it is, available and ready for the public to access, it has to be re-advertised at this stage before we would be able to take action. That's correct.
Perfect.
And may I, President, is there a possibility that I could give a small report of some of the findings I had in regards to equity and also the people of color that would be affected?
You could, Councilor Diaz. Would you like to give that report now or immediately prior to the vote so it's fresh in the minds of public and councilors?
I guess I could wait. That'll be fine.
Either way, okay. Other council comments? We'll get there. Council first. All right. From the public, comments on the action to move the bill.
I speak Spanish and I speak English very well because I used to teach English. Can you explain this resolution? Because my understanding is that these points are given to people that have been in the department for a while, people that have been veterans. And what message are we sending? Do you think about it? Yeah, I approve it. Let's take these points away. What message are we sending? I'm going to take my toys and go. This has made us be good to recruit people. We have people with good experience in the fire department. So what message are we sending? And that is my question to you, President of Council. What message are we sending for equity? We can say equity all we want, but what are we sending? What message are we sending? Okay? And if council votes for it, fine. But what message are you sending to the community?
Anybody else? Mr. Dasher, please.
Which one? Tony Dasher, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. I only have logistical questions, actually, because I want to make sure I understand these processes. So when something goes to advertisement, it gets advertised through a newspaper of general circulation, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
And that would be, in this case, LNP, correct?
That is our paper of public record. Yep.
Does the city pay every time an advertisement needs to be done? Or is it done for free?
We pay
every time.
In stereo.
Yeah. Sorry, so the answer to your question is
It is
yes.
a line item in the city council budget, and
Okay.
Mr. Harris is responsible for making those advertisements and the whole process. That is laid out by the state in third-class city code. I will also just add that there is a bill that is being considered to, at the state legislature, to provide other alternatives for advertisement that are more in keeping with the 21st century.
Good.
And I forget what that bill title is, but hit me up with an email and I can send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dasher. Any others? Ms. Darby?
Tanae Darby, 300 block of South Marshall Street. I agree with you delaying on this resolution. From the last time it was brought forth to you, I had the opportunity to speak to many of the fire and police. And I feel that this resolution, if it is considered, it needs to be effective at a later date, not now. So let's say 2023 candidates going forth, that this is, because right now as it stands, the seniority people are of color. There are no low-ranking officers or on fire that are of color. So it really would severely affect our fire and police of color currently. So that is just my suggestion from having spoken to the fire and police since this last resolution was brought forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darby.
And just to, if I may, just to add, Mrs. Darby, I also reached out to several colleagues all across the state of Pennsylvania and even outside of Pennsylvania, whereby they did grandfather in changes, and I don't recall who actually answered my question and said it would be impossible or it would not work out, but it is possible that it can start at a different date for new hires only. That's all I have.
Thank you for that information. And I also spoke to a person I know in Baltimore that's a battalion chief firefighter, and he explained everything to me and why it's an invaluable thing for them to still have available to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darby, and thank you, Councilor Diaz. Okay, one more time. Are there any other public comments on the motion to move it to the next council meeting? Going once, going twice. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. Motion to table to the August 24th meeting. Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Ms. Beke?
Aye.
Ms. Gregg?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz,
Aye.
Mr. Soto,
Aye.
and President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Okay. Which brings us to ordinances for first reading, Administration Bill number 19, 2021.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, establishing appropriations of $5.9 million of American Rescue Plan Act proceeds received in 2020. Substantial change in the use of funds presented in the community.
Come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I appreciate the summary that Councilor Craig provided. We're happy. We did not plan to go through the presentation a second time today. I know it's a long agenda, but we're happy to speak to any additional questions about the HUD action.
So, Director, if you could, per our conversation, like lay it out for everybody else, how we had it in different increments so they know what's being activated when and for what.
Certainly. I'll make a couple general remarks and then I'll let Susanna speak on this particular round as well. One of the things that I think is often confusing about the CDBG funding is that we are actually tracking multiple pots of money at the same time. Each year we get an annual entitlement of CDBG dollars. So we have 2018 dollars, 2019, 2020, et cetera. In addition to that, we also got a few rounds of CARES Act CV money, CDBG CV money. So the round, this is the third and most likely the final round of the CARES Act CV money. And as you stated earlier, this action is essentially to activate that money and allow us to spend it. And in particular, the way this usually works is that we issue requests for proposals to community partners who are then seeking funds to spend that money. And I'll let Susanna just say a few more words about the third round.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the community members here in the audience today, just to give you a little bit of background on the Community Development Block Grant, in case you don't already know, this money has been a part of what our federal government gives to us municipalities for a very long time. It's intended it's intended for housing solutions. It's intended for sort of broad brush solutions to community issues that prevent community development, but there's a focus on housing. The CARES money was introduced to us in March, and we've had three rounds. The first round was for about $1 million. For information on that, you can access where we put that money in the 2019 amendment. The second round, we got $0. And then the third round, we got $548,000. And what we decided to do with that money was really focus on public health solutions through the planning process for our Consolidated Action Plan, which is just a bureaucratic name for a budget that we submit to the federal government to say what we're going to do with the money. We asked the community to poll what their priorities were, and a large priority was around public health. And since this money is really intended to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID, we thought this was a really appropriate pot of money to really work to find solutions to some of the public health issues that are going to be exacerbated because of COVID. And that's I think, a good overview. Happy to take further questions.
Thank you, Susanna. Does anybody have?
Okay, so we're talking about public health, and we obviously are focusing on COVID. Can you give me an idea in regards to what exactly are you using the money with? Like, for example, is it for vaccines? Is it for masks? Where is it actually geared to? Is it for Union Community, or is it for Christmas addicts, or? I'm sorry,
That's a
I
great
like,
que-
I
no,
like specifics.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I never know what level of specifics to go to. I actually tend towards specifics myself. So we are, in our previous first round funding, we paid for a public health outreach worker who focused on increasing vaccination in communities, predominantly in the southwest, southeast, and in areas of the northeast. We have seen some preliminary success with that particular worker, and so that was our first thing that we funded, and that was for I don't know the specific amount, but it was around $150,000. I think it was 154 something something something. Apologies for not, I can get that specific number to you.
Okay.
The second round, or the third round, we've committed $66,000 for an outreach worker in the downtown area to work with some of our most vulnerable community members who may be exposed to COVID. This outreach worker, the program design is still happening, but we would hope that this person would engage with community members who are on the streets and work with them to connect them to resources so they can be safer from COVID-19. We've also committed to have an additional $282,000 set aside for public services that focus on public health. It's a more general bucket that we hope will understand what that money will be used for once we get through a planning effort. We've set aside money for planning around health needs assessment. We don't really fully understand what the health needs assessment is for the Lancaster City area, so we think it's important to understand what the needs are before developing programs and submitting RFPs into the community. And so I hope that answers your question.
Does. The next question would be, have you seen any resistance or possibly problems in getting people vaccinated because A, they're disabled, B, they may not speak the language, or they don't understand? I've gotten where they've gotten their first shot, and then after that, they didn't know where to go. Is there, okay, go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Councilor Diaz. Susanna had mentioned a little while ago that we've hired a COVID outreach specialist. That's actually a partnership between LGH Penn Medicine and the city. It's been our senior health officer and bureau chief, Kim Whistler, who's been helping to manage that staff person, Carly, along with staff at LGH. And that's actually the express purpose of that particular position, is to try to help connect those residents in the community who are having trouble accessing a vaccination for whatever reason, whether it's because of resistance due to concerns about the vaccine, trying to increase education, also connect where there might be a truly like a physical barrier to get to the vaccination. Happy to provide some additional information to you about what we're finding through that program so far. I can't remember off the top of my head how long Carly has been on board now. It's been a few months, so we should have some anecdotal evidence about the things that are going well and the things that aren't going well.
Okay, so my final question, I'm not interrogating you at all.
No, no problem.
I know that people like myself that are of Spanish culture, Hispanic, they see a white person come to their door, they're not going to reveal or maybe even close their door. Is there anybody else that's walking around getting whatever information that's needed by the, in the constituency, in the in the city, or let's say the Southeast? I mean, I go to the Southeast, they offer me coffee. But it's a reality that they see somebody that's not of their culture or not of their. If you understand what I'm trying to say, because I know how they feel, and I'm just trying to see if there's another person that's tagging along or another person that's actually doing the outreach that speaks their language, that makes them feel comfortable.
I think that's an excellent point, and actually connects back to the comment that the gentleman made earlier about the comprehensive plan and our engagement related to the comprehensive plan. I'd answer that in two ways. First of all, within city government, we have been making a concerted effort to hire more individuals, both within my department and outside the department, who are Spanish speakers to help bridge that gap. I would also say that in some cases, we may have a project manager who does not speak Spanish, and we recognize that making those partnerships, seeking an ambassador to communities who may not speak English as a first language is another way to do that effectively. So even if for example, I speak a tiny bit of Spanish, I don't speak a lot of Spanish, one of my first steps would be to partner with an organization who would be trusted in the community.
And if I could just follow up on that, I've been in close contact with folks from different healthcare providers in the city. There are efforts underway as part of Back to School to have LGH and Penn Medicine having pop-up clinics as another layer to reach families who are re-engaging with public school reopening. There are a number of organizations that are continuing to provide connections to specific communities, whether that's a faith community, a community that's associated with a community center, to advance and increase vaccinations. And, you know, in this, as we're seeing the Delta variant and the increase related to the Delta variant and the degree of contagion that is stemming from the Delta variant, we are open to any and all suggestions that council members have, community members have, about any other places or ways that we can do that level of outreach. We have, Union Community Care has tried its hand at door-to-door outreach. It poses some challenges just in terms of the follow-up and scheduling, and so it's not off the table, but it is something at the very neighborhood level that we're trying to look at additional avenues. So we welcome any and all suggestions for how better to do that. And Councilwoman Diaz, if you in particular would like to speak to staff about any suggestions that you have, I am happy to make that happen.
I will be happy to. And by the way, another outlet would be the community of religious groups, because there are different ones, obviously, all through Lancaster, but they have taken their measures to make sure that people are protected. But then there are those that obviously, again, they don't speak the language. So I think reaching out to our community of faith would be another outlet to investing, to making sure that they're educated, especially. I can testify that I personally know that I got tested for COVID after vaccine. I wasn't sick. If they kept telling me I was sick, I was like, all right, well, you say I'm sick, what the heck? So I was locked up for 10 days. So, you know, these are things that people don't understand. You know, I got the shot, but yet I'm positive. So those are very important things that we should invest in reference to, the grants or the money that we have. Just a suggestion.
And it is being done, Councilor Diaz. Zaira Falou and Milzy Carrasco have an email distribution list. We are regularly communicating with our Spanish-speaking churches and working with them to ensure that they have access to the information that they need. And we continue to do that on an ongoing basis. It has been just incredibly challenging, these times that we are in right now. And so again, I welcome any specific context that you have, that just to make sure that we are reaching all of the Spanish-speaking churches in the community. We've done just a lot of outreach, and I know there's more to do.
Thank you for the recommendations. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from council? Comments from the public?
Yep, I have a comment and a suggestion. There's a gentleman, Reverendo Soto, not you, that has a church and he feeds the homeless. That's a good avenue for the homeless that you're trying to vaccinate. Another thing that Ms. Diaz said, and it's, if we're doing all this outreach and it's not happening, we have to think out of the box, okay? Sometimes I've had to, when I was a teacher, buy a pillow for a student, buy a clock for a student. For an example, there's things we need to do. It's challenging, but either we swim together, or as they said in Holyoke, Massachusetts, we drown together. So we need to think out of the box. And we can sit here and look pretty and our hair in place and everything, but those people out there are the ones that elect you guys, and they're feeling it. So I really think, Mayor, we should look at house to house, okay? When you have inspectors going house to house to see if people have things in order, that's good. But we need to do it with whatever community person we're doing. And I know it's difficult. Myself, sometimes I go to this lady and she has dementia and she doesn't eat. So I bring her food. Why are you bringing me food? You know, it's challenging for me. I'm tired and I'm delivering food for you to eat. So there's challenges out there, but I think the house to house will get to our community. It really will. But like they say, you have to hablar español if you want to get, you know, and not look Spanish. Hablarlo, you know what I'm saying? Because I've had kids that I've talked in the Spanish and I don't speak Spanish. So, you know, we need to get people that are fluent. Okay? Thank you.
Other comments from the public? No? Perfect. Thank you, Director Dell. Ms. Starkson?
I think we owe them a vote.
We do.
Yep, we do.
We do.
In that case, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Ms. Beke?
Aye.
Ms. Gregg?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Soto?
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you all. That brings us, that brings us to Administration Resolution number 45. Mr. Harris?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster requesting a Keystone Communities grant of $25,000 from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development for planning of Vision Zero implementation along South Prince and South Queen Streets.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Councilor Soto.
Thank you, Councilman President. I have nothing else to add, but if Mr. Campbell would like to add anything additional than what I've already spoken to, I would ask him to come out and share his thoughts.
Thank you very much, Councilor Soto. As usual, you summarized very well what the nature of this particular resolution is. Just a couple of additional pieces. The reason that this particular area was selected for this Keystone grant was because it ranks very highly in the high impact network of Vision Zero. Those are the areas where you have high incidence of accidents between various vehicles and pedestrians and or bicycles. It also ranks very, very highly in our block strength index. So it was a confluence of these two very important things. We want to be able to be focusing the resources we have, what limited resources we have, on how to better the situations that we can. This is just for study at this particular time. It's not implementation. And during that study process, there will be outreach to the community as well as a variety of suggestions for what can be done to improve the safety situation in the public right-of-way, slowing traffic, neck downs, striping of the streets, signage, lighting, a variety of things will be explored.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Are there any questions from the council?
If I may.
Please.
In the past few years, and I'm not sure if you have that, probably you don't, but let's say within the past 3 years, do you know how many incidents and how many fatalities have been in these particular streets? I mean, I know this is like they drag race through these streets, but I just wanted to know if, you know, for the community to realize that, you know, we do have a lot of incidents.
I do not offhand know that information. However, part of the Vision Zero study that was completed in the last couple of months does have the high incidence of whether it was death and or heavy accidents. So that information is readily available. I can make it available to you and to this body as well. But it is, I believe, on the Vision Zero page of the Engage Lancaster site.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I'll be looking at that. That's all I have.
Any more questions from council? Or comments? Any questions from the public? Or comments from the public? Council President, that includes this resolution for me.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Arroyo?
Aye.
Ms. Beke?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Soto?
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. That brings us to Administration Resolution number 46.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster requesting a Keystone Communities grant of up to $500,000 from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development for streetscape and safety improvements.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This one goes back to you, Councilor Soto.
Thank you, Council President. Again, I have nothing else to add on this than what I spoke to earlier, unless Mr. Campbell has additional comments to make.
Sure. Yes, again, it was a very complete presentation of what is contained in the resolution. Just for further information, this will be design and implementation for the area of the, I believe it's the 300 or 400 block of South Ann Street, hitting Juniata over to Milburn Park. These are areas, some areas nearby, there has been street paving recently, but that particular block is still only in fair condition or poor condition. And we want to be able to upgrade that street. We do want to look at neck downs and a few other elements that may make the public right-of-way safer in that particular area. But then we start to have a critical mass of capital improvements in that particular area of the community, which will be supporting the hopefully newly opened Milburn Park towards the tail end of this season. The Kaboom entity, which had been very successful with us in the past, will be putting in a playground at Milburn Park, and there will be other improvements around that. So having safe passage from the adjacent community is a very important aspect of this work.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Are there any questions or comments from council? Yes, Council President.
I'm sorry. Forgive me, Mr. Campbell, if I missed this. Was there any sense of a timeline post the study for the streetscape improvements? And you may have said that out loud and I missed it entirely, but.
It's going to be, since most of these are relatively straightforward improvements, it's going to be looking at the condition of the paving and saying that needs to be upgraded, the condition of sidewalk or curb, elements in the public right-of-way that need to be improved and updated. However, there may be introduction of piano key paving, and or in a couple of cases, we want to consider neck downs because of when we were looking at the block strength indicator, some of the factors in that particular area were some incidents of high speed, and if we can reduce the distance between for pedestrians to cross from intersection to intersection, one key way of doing that is with the neck downs.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Soto, a follow-up?
No, I do not.
No, may I?
Yes, please, please.
Okay. And this is maybe a little broader, but I think particularly when talking to folks in the Southeast, they often feel that they are surprised by streetscape and road work. So just if you could revisit for me how it is that we let people know in a particular neighborhood when the sort of public works work that is going to say take up a street or take up a sidewalk goes on.
In this particular case, and in the case before, for South Queen and South Prince, part of the outreach was to SACA, to the organization which is representing what a lot of the push for public improvements in that particular area. So there's been an ongoing dialogue in both of those particular areas for what needs to happen. There were further requests by other residents that something should be done in those particular areas. So it was natural with the confluence of our data and the block strength index to say that these are good areas to be able to go for. With that, we will be continuing to reach out to those community organizations. And if there is design that needs to be done, we will reach back out and be able to show them what is proposed. But we will be giving long lead times before any actual work gets started, and notification of what, if any, parking alternatives there may have to be, what other kinds of arrangements may need to be made, and if there's any interruption with how one gets from one side of the street to the school or anything like that.
And I would just also add that South End Concerned Neighbors has been involved in the Elm Street initiative, and Ms. Bird has been apprised of this effort, and we've been working in conjunction with South End Concerned Neighbors as well. So the Elm Street grant lies with SACA, but the Elm Street initiative encompasses South End Street.
Right. And I think my question was, this is extremely informative. And my question was, I feel badly because I think my question was much more pedestrian, which is, you know, really when we're about to tear up someone's street, especially in the Southeast, do we do any door knocking, mailing, or flyering? Because that's a thing that I've heard people ask for, like, oh, wow, I don't have a parking space. And I understand that there's like 18,000 other things that go into a public works project, but I think that was more my question.
It's definitely all of the above when it comes to interrupting the streetscape for the actual construction. There's often up to 1 to 2 weeks notice in a variety of different venues, but then the door knockers go up at minimum 3 days before the actual work starts.
Okay.
There are often mailers that let people know that the work is intended to take place between date X and date Y.
And I'll just also add that it has been incredibly frustrating, and I think some of the concerns that I've heard from South East residents have been in relation to UGI's utility work. And even with PennDOT, I'm sure all of council has noticed that Prince Street is finally getting paved, and we got less than 12 hours notice that they were going to begin milling. In fact, we didn't actually know that they were going to begin milling until I came to work and was like, what is happening? And Amber tracked down their press release that they sent out literally the night before. So there are things that we as the city are responsible for, and then there are other entities, and that is not to say that we want to hear from residents about all of these challenges, because then we communicate as best we are able to the subcontractors that are hired by, in that case, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, or the subcontractors that UGI is using as part of their utility work.
Thank you. Councilor Soto.
Council President, that's all I have on this item on the resolution.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker?
Aye.
Ms. Gregg?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Soto?
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. That brings us to Administration Resolution number 47. Mr. Harris?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the rules and regulations of the Civil Service Board for the examination and appointment of applicants to positions in the Bureau of Police for the City of Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Motion to approve?
Second.
This, we have a motion and a second, and I believe, Mr. Hopkins, are you prepared to address this? This is different than the matter of seniority points, and really engages in the process at a different place at the point of recruitment and testing, to add more weight to the oral exam, so that in pardon me, to add more weight to the oral exam, so that not all the weight is on the written exam, allowing us to get a better pool of candidates, and not just those who can, like, you know, fill out a police report the exact right way at first. But Mr. Harris, Mr. Hopkins, my apologies, can provide more context.
Sure. Thanks, Council President. So this was actually, the process here for civil service regulations are that they go through a process with the Civil Service Commission itself. They adopted the proposed recommendations for changes to the civil service regulations at their May 10th meeting. And so now, several months later, we're in front of you with the resolution to approve the recommendations that are coming from the Civil Service Commission. And they boil down to five pieces. The first one is just more for clarity's sake in that they reference Chapter 67 of the City Code, and that's the part of the City Code that governs how promotions will be done within the Police Bureau. So again, that's more for clarity. The language is more for clarity. The second piece is that the prior regulations had the scoring for the written exam was provided, the rules for scoring for the written exam were provided by the commission, and the scoring of the oral exam was provided by the Police Bureau, or was set by the Police Bureau. And in these changes, the new regulations provide that the scoring for each exam is established by the Civil Service Commission. So they are governing both the oral and the written exam scoring process. Rules and regs for the oral review board will now consist of at least 3 persons. So whoever is involved in the oral interviews of prospective officers. The makeup is determined by the Civil Service Board, Civil Service Commission, and can include up to 2 members of the Police Bureau. Can also include individuals who are not representatives of the Police Bureau and representatives of the Human Resources Bureau of the city. In the past, previously, the oral exam board consisted primarily, and usually entirely, of current command staff within the Police Bureau. And so this change would expand not the number of individuals doing the oral interviews, but the makeup of that board. And again, that will be made up. That decision will be made by the Civil Service Commission, not by the Police Bureau. Fourth is that the new rules allow for the Civil Service Board to set the minimum passing grade for the oral examinations. So again, setting that process within the commission. And then lastly is the issue that you brought up, that previously the written exam in effect was 100% of the scoring. The oral exams or the oral interviews were performed, but the written exam really ruled the day in terms of whether or not an officer, or where a prospective officer ended up on the hiring list. So what will happen now is that the weighting of the new regulations is 40% for the written exam and 60% for the oral exam, or the oral interview process. And those 5 changes are effectively what are included in the recommendations from the Civil Service Commission.
Thank you. Council comments or questions? From the public? Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Beke?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Soto?
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you all. That concludes our legislative agenda and brings us to our second public comment period, open for comment about issues not on the agenda. The same general rules apply. Please begin with your name and block of residence, and keep your comments to 3 minutes in length or less. Sir.
My name is Ivan Acosta Velez. I'm from 804 Highland Avenue. You have to pardon me, it's been more than 20 years that I've stayed for a whole council meeting. I'm getting old, but I have some concerns. I stand before you as a citizen of Lancaster for over 45 years. I've seen the changes, I've seen the positive, I've seen the negative. To point out some issues that keep on showing up with the police disrespect and breaking the law continues to happen. We get this under control in the perspective in our community. Doesn't change, will not happen if we don't have the police following the rules. There's been a number of problems that we could resolve, and it could be done in-house. But since we see that a review committee has not been made in the city, the community is looking into making a review committee for ourselves to kind of see and oversee people making complaints. Complaints doesn't mean we don't love the police. Complaints doesn't mean that you take the money away from the police. Every time I go through a place, most of the time I see Black folk and Spanish folk sitting on the floor. When I go and they are arresting a white person, they're standing up. That has to stop. the perception. I went with a Jaguar. I had a Jaguar, an old Jaguar falling apart, to Pershing Avenue. Our wonderful police department stopped me for no reason at all, asked for ID. I guess they thought I was whatever because I had a Jaguar. But the reason I had the Jaguar is my mom was sick and it was the biggest car I could get to get her in. So my concern is that all the kids that were in my car came from Puerto Rico. They asked for their ID for no reason at all. We were in charge, okay? We just didn't look the look. We need to stop this because we can say all you want to say here and it looks good in paper. Allá afuera, out there. That's what it means, allá afuera. Our black folk and our Spanish kids do not respect the police, and they should. Not all officers, and I'll say it again, are bad. But the ones that are bad are bad. And you could sit here and look pretty and say, we're going to review and we're going to do it. It took 20 years to hear them say, this gentleman say what the change with the review. We've been trying to get those changes for 20 years. We can't wait another 20 years. You know, an officer stops me when they recognize me. Okay, hi, Mr. Acosta. You should do that to every, you know, even if you don't know the name. Why are you sitting the black folk on the floor? Sometimes these kids haven't done anything. They're coming from basketball, they're coming late. Maybe they broke curfew, or they had a little thing in the mirror of their car. You know, there's bigger things here, bigger fish to fry. With the people that bring drugs into our community, hurt our young people, that's what we need to focus. I'm not saying the little things don't matter, but stopping a car because a freshener is in their window, yeah, it's against the law. But are all laws just? You know, and I'm telling you, please, and this I'll finish. And pardon me because I'm old and it might take a little bit, 3 minutes. I used to have a neighbor from the Aguilo community. She called the police on me 255 times. Lucky I was Ivan Acosta Vélez and I was meeting there. And I met the chief, who there was at the time, the mayor at the time, Mr. Miskel, and we resolved the issue. This lady had mental illness. She called one time, there were 5 Spanish people, and we talk loud. If you don't know it now, we don't want to fight, we just talk loud. Right, Mr. Soto?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, okay, we talk loud. And we're just very, okay? That doesn't mean we want to fight. We're just that's in the African part of us, that's in the Indian part of us, and the Spanish part of us. So we were talking in a porch, and she called the police. And the policeman knew me and said, Ivan, go inside because she's calling you trying to plan her to kill her. We were talking about hamburgue, hot dogs. Mr. Soto knows what that is. Okay, it was a labor thing. What tells you my experience was negative, but one officer, I asked him, I said, can we make a bet and I'll take you for coffee? Can you go in back of that corner when you all leave and see if she doesn't call in, and I'm gonna stay in my house? Guess what? She called again and they charged her. So what I'm trying to say, I fought for that, so I know what it is. You might say, oh, well, if you would behave. You know what? I've never been a drug dealer. I never done drugs. Kids that I raised that were fostered, they've done it. But I haven't. They haven't lived in my house. So what I'm trying to say is, we want respect, we'll give you respect. Please stop sitting our kids on the floor. They're coming from basketball, you know? And sometimes it's because they don't fit the quote, or they're strange in the neighborhood. Can you really look into it? It's an issue. And that's why, and part of me, it's been 20 years that I haven't stayed for a whole council meeting. And it's not that I'm picking on you. It's this that you have, that you can do something about it. Because you can talk about it in an election, but I'll bet you in 4 more years, is something gonna change? You need to change it. Not make the police feel bad. Community policing helps a lot. What happened with that? We talk about it, but I don't see it. I haven't met my community officers, and we tried. We had a community thing in Beaver Street. We invited them. We're still waiting for them. You know, that's what I'm saying. So we can introduce them to the people. So please, as a councilman, think about it. We're spending too much money settling suits. We don't talk about it, but that money we can use in training, helping people, getting jobs for the community, making people happy. Now, are we gonna resolve everything? No. But I hope in the next 4 years or before then, you can really do something about it and not hammer the police. That's not what I'm saying. Because when you say something about police, oh, Ivan don't like the policemen. I have family that are police, okay? So it's not about that. It's about the ones that are here that come with that. What's the word, Janet? Gun-ho? That son cowboys. We don't have cowboys there. We don't have rangers. We have wonderful policemen. But some are not doing it. So please look into it. Thank you, and thank you for listening to me all night. God bless.
Thank you.
Mr. Acosta, have you had a chance to schedule, I know when we met last week, you were reaching out to Chief Bay, and I know that he's away this week, but have you scheduled that appointment?
They had told me that they were going to get back to me, and they haven't.
Okay.
But I also, if it's okay with you, the mayor, I would also like to meet, you said there was someone there that's working with the Spanish community in the mental health issue?
Well, we have 2 police social workers.
I would like to meet with one of them, not to take, but
Yeah.
because there's some issues that are concerning about that.
Okay, so Mr. Acosta, that is Leilani Tran,
Mhm.
and I will make sure to connect you. And
Yeah.
before you leave, I want to just confirm your phone number and email address because I still have the file.
787, I don't have a problem. It's Puerto Rico cell phone, 307-9146. I don't have a problem. The whole city has it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Acosta.
And the address is 804 Highland Avenue,
Yep.
17603. Thank you. And you know what? Smile. You guys look tired, I understand. I used to come to this meeting, smile. And you know what? When you smile, you think a little bit different. God bless. Thanks.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you. Ms. Darby and then Director Campbell.
My question is for you. Tanae Darby, 300 block South Marshall Street. My question is for you about the South End. Well, actually, it's about Milburn Park because I frequent there every Wednesday with my grandson. So the parking lots, are they going to be done as well?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So I wanted to make sure that we also addressed the concern when we did the surveying around the park. The safety of the parking lot that is on Juniata and Lime. Okay, so I want to make sure we're going to put some mirrors so that like people can see when a car is coming around that corner. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Okay, I just want to make sure that that happens because that was a very important concern of the community, that children walking, coming from either direction, if a car was coming, they couldn't see it. So I felt that mirrors being put there would resolve that issue. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darby. Director Campbell, please.
Yes, thank you. So to just follow up with this with Ms. Darby, we will make sure that someone reaches out to you also and with SACA to make sure that the other elements of the perimeter of that park are addressed appropriately. I wanted to make comments regarding the eastbound connector comments that had been made earlier in the meeting. And I want to say that first and foremost that yes, we had made some key mistakes. This is something that being able to schedule that meeting in a way that it was publicly announced properly kind of slips through the cracks. Parts of the community were notified early and other parts were not. And it turned out that people who were very, very concerned only learned about it late in the process. This is an object lesson about what happens when we don't necessarily take the extra care to make sure that all the different parties and stakeholders in the community know what's going on in the way that it's going on. Having said that, I frankly am very, very pleased with the type of comments and feedback that we got from the community. Because we made that mistake, and I do not want to repeat that ever again in life, and in fact, we're working with Milsey Carrasco and working with my own public right-of-way staff to make sure that we are all aware of the protocols for public notification of all of our public meetings related to initiatives. But in many ways, because of that misstep, we got a lot more comments than we might ordinarily have gotten in this particular arena. There were 2 or 3 very thoughtful emails and letters to us and to the letter and to the editor that were made. And it was very clear. I take those comments as an earnest effort of goodwill because these people are knowledgeable and wanting to make sure that the streets, the bicyclists, the pedestrians, and the vehicles are as safe as practical. I'm committed. When that meeting took place, it was at the very beginning of a 3-week public input period, which ended this past Friday. So we are in the process of collating all of those kinds of comments, and we will absolutely and definitely be reaching back out to the community with a minimum of a 2 to 3 week notice with a wide variety of how we make sure notice is made to the community. And it may not be the last of these meetings because the concerns were very, very interesting, very, very clear, but also very, very knowledgeable. So I want to commend not only the people who are very concerned in getting involved in our public works work, but it is, as far as I'm concerned, the means or a means of putting the public back in public works. We want to listen. We don't want to be making these missteps, but we want to be able to make it right as much as practical because the public right-of-way is actually what? The public right-of-way. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Campbell.
Okay.
Mr. Dastra?
It's me, Tony Dastra, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. So this has been sitting on my mind for some time. I have been reading the third class city code optional charter because I find it problematic that, and this, goes back to some discussions we don't need to rehash in full, but I have a problem with the fact that in a conversation we may designate specifically Mosey Carrasco is not an actual administrator because she exists within the office of the mayor. And it seems to me that we can change that with a simple vote. It looks to me that as the third class city code optional charter, section D, it's under mayor and administration, but it does fall back to council. Give me one moment. Section 415, subsection B, the city may have a department of administration and shall have other departments, it doesn't specify what, not exceeding, sorry, reading on tiny screen, not exceeding a total of 9 as council may establish by ordinances. All the administrative functions, powers and duties of the city other than those vested in the office of the city clerk, city treasurer, and city controller shall be allocated and assigned among and within such departments. So that it seems to me that we can make this change and we could do it expediently and without really terraforming what the government is and how it operates. I think Mosey Carrasco deserves equal respect of being an administrator, just like any of the other administrators, and furthermore, equal work to equal pay. But that's something that we've already gone through on that. So that is my request, is if we can figure out how to put some sort of ordinance together to make it, I'm saying her name, but it is about the position as well, to make sure that this position and anyone going forward is treated just like any other city administrator, and we consider them as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra.
I have a question. On this administrator, what is the name of her title, Mayor?
She is the director of the Office of Neighborhood Engagement.
Okay. Now, question, maybe, what are the benefits of doing that, and what are the, you know what I'm saying? What are?
To what Mr. Dastra is proposing,
Yes.
I would have to get back to you because I need to read the city code, but
Okay,
I
that
can tell
maybe
you.
that way, President, we can find out exactly, what would be, the pros and the cons, because then if we lock the mayor from choosing other people for something that comes up because of this, we have to be careful with that. Okay, thank you.
No, I think that's right. Thank you. Do we have other public comments? Going once? Going twice. Thank you for everybody who came out to comment. I believe we now have the report of the mayor. Mayor Sirachi.
Thank you, Council President. I have two items tonight. One you may have already heard of, but I wanted to call special attention to it. What hurts our neighbors hurts all of us, and this has been affirmed over and over as the pandemic continues. The same is true that as we seek to uplift and show compassion for one another, our whole community thrives. Living in a community automatically ties us to the well-being of our neighbors. With this understanding, I am pleased to announce that the City of Lancaster and Penn Medicine Lancaster General Health have been awarded a trauma-informed community grant of $300,000 from the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency that will provide training resources for city employees with a focus in housing and public safety, as well as residents and neighborhood groups in trauma-informed principles. A trauma-informed community strives to do no harm and recognizes past and ongoing traumas such as historic and structural racism, exclusion, isolation, and the chronic daily stressors of concentrated poverty and exposure to community violence, many of the things that we have or others have referenced here this evening. So I look forward to keeping you apprised of our progress as planning is underway, and this is grant funding, which we appreciate being able to partner with Penn Medicine, Lancaster General Health, as they also work to adopt more trauma-informed principles. I also am pleased to report that the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency has selected Lancaster County to participate in the first ever field-based Reducing Racial and Ethnic Disparities in Juvenile Justice program in collaboration with the Georgetown University McCourt School of Public Policy's Center for Juvenile Justice Reform and the Center for Children's Law and Policy. So this is going to begin with a week-long training in September with our local team, which includes Sherry Modine, who's the Senior Juvenile Justice Administrator for the county, Judge Workman, who is the Juvenile Court Judge, Lance Green, who's the Juvenile ADA, as well as Chief John Bay from our own City Police Department, Vanessa Filbert from the Community Police Working Group, and President of Community Action Partnership, Joshua Hunter, Director of Crispus Addicts, and Aaron Conahan from the School District of Lancaster. And so this is something that I wanted council to be aware of as we begin in earnest to further reduce the number of young people of color who are being referred to the juvenile court system. And we appreciate the partnership with the county and our nonprofit partners, as well as the school district, in accelerating this work. And also, I wanted to just alert council that the first community survey regarding utilization of the American Rescue Plan funding will go live in the next day or so. We're finishing the translation. That will be posted on Engage Lancaster. And so that's just a heads up to look for that and encouragement for everybody to weigh in. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor Sirachi. As my, I have no substantive report, but will just reiterate to members of council that without deliberating, I'm very interested in your feedback and advice on how council ought position itself on the implementation and distribution of American Rescue Plan funds. You all represent different constituencies, and I think our voices are stronger together. So just want to reiterate that and encourage, sorry, and encourage, any member of council, or, if you have a constituent or some other stakeholder whose feedback you want to move forward, please forward that to Mr. Harris. He'll have that in doing that and the many, many other things that he does. I may have mentioned this at the top of the meeting, but I will mention again that at the next meeting of council, we will have masks available by the door, and we are asking all persons who attend a public meeting in City Hall if they are not vaccinated, to wear a mask, and we are encouraging the vaccinated to wear a mask just the same. But it is required of those persons who are not vaccinated. Thank you very much. Mayor, you look?
Just to clarify, the policy is going into effect on Thursday, August the 12th. So I just wanted to make that clear. And that all public, regardless of vaccination status, will be required to wear a mask in City Hall when coming for any city-related business. Just to clarify that.
Thank you. Well, in that case, council comments. Okay. Hearing none, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.